Perfect. Well, I appreciate those who joined this evening. Thank you for being here. I think both of you have been have joined in some of our prior workshops. As always, I am Bonnie, director at the Waukesha County Historic Society and Museum. And this workshop series we've been doing over the last months, really in support of a program that is part of the city's 125th anniversary celebration, Waukesha Unlocked, coming up in October, the weekend of October 9th and 10th this year. So look forward to that. The Historic Society and Museum will be open on the 9th. We will be giving tours of our spaces. There is a wedding event happening in the courthouse that day. We're very excited to see those events back this year, but we will be doing some behind the scenes tours down in our collections areas. So absolutely fitting the bill of that unlocked idea, getting you into the spaces and places you don't otherwise get to go into, at least not regularly. I also wanted to make sure to mention, as this is going to be posted on our website for folks to continue accessing it, who are doing work for Waukesha Unlocked, the next workshop in September the 14th at 7 is a mandatory, that is from the Planning Committee for Waukesha Unlocked, all host sites and volunteers in attendance that evening. That one's going to be very, very technical, specific stuff to that Waukesha Unlocked event. Expectations for volunteers, sites, hosts, what to expect. So just a heads up there for that workshop. That September one is, again, very specific for Waukesha Unlocked technical details. And we've got another person joining us now, so we'll get her added in. All right. So technical details out of the way. If you are in search of prior workshops, you can go to our website. I've got the link there. Or if you do not follow us on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. In the last year, as we've done so many of these streamed programs, online programs, so you can become a subscriber on our YouTube channel. All of the workshops get posted there, as well as some of our other programs. You can see in that lineup there, there's the blue icon or thumbnail to the far right. That's from May. We did a program for Preservation Days with the City of Waukesha Preservation Alliance, talking about the historic districts in the city. So again, if you are researching a property, one, you've got the workshop series there, but also that Waukesha Historic Districts program in particular. If you may have a property in one of those historic districts, that could be a really fantastic program for you to check out if you missed it the first time around. So, reviewing what we are trying to accomplish with these workshops, trying to help you conduct original research about your property or business location, whether that's a home or a business or a property that you own, even if it's land, what the history of land property is. All of the above, trying to help get you resources, identifying where they are, what they are. So that second point on this slide. And then finally, in what we are focusing on tonight, creating a usable research document, tour, or program that is valuable. That is the most important part of research. And it's actually really why I am a public historian and not an academic historian. I find highest value in producing material content that is public, exhibits that you can come visit, hosting workshops like this that can help spread knowledge and information to as many people as possible. And so really, ultimately, I have secretly been training you all to become public historians in a way that you can build up your research to a point where it is shareable with others. So that's what we're talking about tonight, is what are some ways, what are some channels that you can focus those energies? Again, with a focus on that Waukesha Unlocked program coming up in October. That program is about bringing folks into a property, into a building or a site that maybe doesn't normally offer tours of the structure, where you're very good at talking about the business that's located there, but you've never really thought about talking about the building in support of your business or your organization that's located there. So with that in mind, tonight is bringing it all together. which I've got a typo on my slide. I will fix that later. Bringing it all together. So community engagement is really what those tours, also through social media, creating engagement pieces. And I also am going to talk about a little bit tonight, historic designation as an output for historic property research. You may be familiar with things like the National and State Register of Historic Places or the local landmarks commissions. So talk a little bit more about what those are, what they do, what they don't do, and to what resources they have that can support you, not just from a designation standpoint, but also just as a property owner. What can you do if you do earn a designation through one of those channels? But to start, you've done all of this research, you've gone through city directories, you've gone through map records, you have hopefully a research document full of facts and figures and information that relates to your home or to your property. So how do you go about getting it together? And this is something that we talk about with researchers who come into our research center or students who are working with us. Think about it like a story. Right? You've already got a built-in timeline for what that story is, but you can really start to frame your research around those key kind of questions that are so crucial to storytelling, right? The who, the what, the where, the when. So not just creating a timeline with facts and figures, but thinking about it narratively as well, because it really is those stories around a property that get people intrigued, right? Some other good jumping off points then when you're thinking about how to start writing this down. What do folks notice about your property? If they walk into your home or walk up to your home and say, that's a really interesting window kind of decoration around, what, we've got somebody else joining us. What kind of style is that? Or for the interior of a structure, you know, that's a really odd arrangement that you would have such a small room at the back of the building. I wonder what that was for. Or in the basement of buildings, and this is one of my favorites because it does come up sometimes. Old structures that have kind of cave features. There are several in the area, but these kind of cave features that are dug into the earth behind a property. What might those be in cases either storage areas, kind of cold storage areas, or in a couple examples, lagering caves from breweries that used to be in the area. And so that kind of leads to that last question I like to think about when I'm documenting, writing out a property tour is what surprised me along the way? What is the thing that was kind of fascinating or took me a long time to find out? So the most surprising thing that you learn along the way. The other thing to keep in mind is you may be the first person who has done the depth of research on this property. You are in many ways the expert on your property right now. And so don't take for granted the things that you know now, because in your documenting of that, it will create a richer research piece for others then to be able to access and use in the future. But I thought I would give a couple practical examples of kind of these ideas in practice. So because we are doing this on Zoom and cannot go out and visit locations, I've given us a couple structures, locations, properties to take a bit of a look at. This one's got some inscriptions written on it that give it away a little bit, but one approach to talking about this house could be to treat it architecturally. It is a structure, one of the earliest houses built in what became the city of Waukesha. It was built on part of the southeast quarter of Section 3 in Township 6 North, Range 19 East. That legal property description I was able to take by using Sanborn fire insurance maps, going to the Waukesha County Register of Deeds site, entering address information that I could lift that description from, something we talked about in a prior workshop, right? Getting that legal description is something that can help you carry through researching the property through map records then. With that description, section 3 in Waukesha Township, I know that section 3 is going to be on the northern part of the township because the numbering system starts 1 in the easternmost section and then goes west and then jumps down before the numbers continue through 36. So it's right on the border with our township to the north, Pewaukee Township, which means there's probably going to have been a lot of exchange across that township line because of where this is located in the city today. That it very much is incorporated, that line is very blurred between the two townships at that point. Again, it was one of the first land claims that we know about and what would become the city. And so it reflects the time period that was happening in the late 1830s, early 1840s. It's this beautiful Greek Revival architectural style. That Greek Revival, as the name implies, you're thinking ancient Greece, a little bit of Roman classical, but really keeping to that Greek classical. So you've got that front-facing pediment, that triangle feature on the main bay of the house facing out at you, very symmetrically placed windows, not just on top of each other, but also that window that stacks over that doorway. Again, very indicative of that Greek Revival design. It also tells us a little bit about where the owner, where the builder of this house likely came from. Greek Revival architecture was exceedingly popular on the East Coast of the United States, as well as into Canada. And many of the earliest pioneers into this area were Yankees. They were New Englanders, Yankees, both Canada and US side, moving west as the land claims open. So again, that architectural style really reinforcing the time period that we can date this property to. The other thing, architecturally speaking, is it has that wing to it, what's sometimes referred to as an L coming off the side of the building. That L, if you can look at the picture, there's a tree that kind of is bisecting it, but there is what appears to be a chimney stack peeking out from behind the tree. Doing a little bit of research on kind of Greek Revival architecture and common features. One is that L, but also with that chimney stack, often you would see a summer kitchen that would be located in that L. And that was a way to keep heat out of the main house when you didn't want it there, but that likely there would also still be a primary kitchen in that main bay structure of the home that could be a source of warmth in the winter months, in addition likely to a fireplace, a centralized fireplace very often, again, just based on other comparable Greek Revival architecture. So taking that architectural style and looking at other examples, pulling other information just about that. So all of that story that I can build about this structure, all without referencing perhaps its most important and most interesting identifier. This is the home of Morris Cutler. He and his brother Alonzo are the two earliest settlers in Prairie Village in what becomes Waukesha. This home, what sits on what is now referred to in legal description as Cutler's second addition to the city of Waukesha, is today Cutler Park. And so I very deliberately set up the description in the way I did, because you can really think about how you want to structure the information that you have, right? You can allow certain pieces of information to take the lead at the beginning, especially in a tour or a program like this, where I've got your rapt attention. So I kind of want to build a little bit what it is I'm telling you. Sometimes deliberately burying a lead can be a really good way to see if folks are paying attention to. Again, obviously with this photo in front of us, you have that inscription right there, Morris D. Cutler, founder of Waukesha, 1834, that year there, for that year of his migrating out to the newly opened territory of what would become Wisconsin. The other lovely things in this image, Cutler was known to have this kind of menagerie of artifacts. They were largely pieces set up on these pedestals leading up to his house house, pieces that were turning up out of the fields. Two, if you're familiar with Cutler Park, there are effigy mounds at Cutler Park. Likely some of the materials may have been scavenged from overturning some of the secondary or tertiary structures off of those effigy mounds. That house today, it was moved off of the park site, and so it resides just around the corner today. But again, just a quick example of how you can start constructing narrative around a property like this one. The other thing, and this I'm going to pull us back into some of the resources. These two houses are properties that I have interpreted or have been a primary historian talking to folks every day at. One is the Jonathan Hale house, one is the Herrick house. They are different materials though. They both come from the same relative geographic place, but one is that lovely reddish brick home, the Jonathan Hale house. The other one, the Herrick house, and even in the black and white, you can kind of tell it's quarried stone. And so the question in those houses became, they relatively date within about 20 years of each other. They are fairly unique though for the area they are in. The other structures in the region that they're from are wood frame structure. They're not brick, they're not stone. And so it was researching the family names, the builders or first owners associated with them, both Jonathan Hale and Andrew Herrick with the Herrick house. In looking at directories and census records, it becomes obvious that Jonathan Hale was a brickmaker. And so it is therefore much more logical that he would have built this brick house for himself. The other interesting thing with his brick house, and you can kind of see it in this image, even though it looks a bit cropped off on the left, the house is only one room deep. So he can make bricks for himself, and his house, yes, is 3 stories tall, but inside you have very narrow spaces because it's only one room deep. So it is a house that is built over time, whereas he's producing bricks for his living, he's also starting as he can to put bricks off to the side for himself. You may, at this point, be making assumptions about the Herrick house, and indeed, Mr. Herrick had investments in a stone quarry, and so his stone house, likely even without exact receipt evidence, we can, based on the research, based on the years we know he had investments in the quarry, based on the years of construction for the house and the primary years of operation for the quarry, it is very likely that the stones from the quarry he was invested in were used in the construction of his house. And that association is what allowed him to build a stone house like this. Certainly within our region, right? The availability of land and stone from the quarry really alters the type of construction we see in commercial buildings or municipal buildings especially, right? That land and stone is absolutely everywhere. But again, using a multitude of resources, whether it's census records to understand profession or it's business records to understand associations, being able to tie the person to the structure can be very important to being able to tell the story of that structure. So I've taken here a crop or a screenshot of just one part of the 1917 Sanborn fire insurance map. I accessed this through the Library of Congress's collection, which we talked about in a previous workshop, getting access to that, but Library of Congress.gov, and then you can search for Sanborn fire insurance maps. But this is a section of Broadway. Main Street is bisecting just off to the right. And then if you were to continue kind of down in this image, what is down, but in reality would be north and west out on Broadway, you would get to the Fox River here in the city of Waukesha. But I've zoomed in on that stretch of commercial buildings there, and you can see some of the abbreviations. Again, Sanborn Fire Insurance Maps, fantastic resources. There's a tremendous amount of information in them. But starting at 402, we can see SAL, the abbreviation for a saloon. We have a tin shop, a printing business with an indication that it's on the second floor, that 2 below, but a saloon otherwise, another saloon, a grocer, a restaurant. We have a pool room, R''M, and bowling alley on the first floor, and a hall on the second. A hall was usually indicative of a dance hall or a large meeting space. And then as we get close to the river, you see here the indication for a woodworking machine shop, storage, and then other more industrial type structures continuing towards the river. And we've also got along the street side, the addresses, the street addresses for the property. So one of the things that I will do, again, trying to think about, okay, I have all of this information about the property. What is the rest of the story? So I can take this 1917 Sanborn map and then go to a 1917 city directory, a right city directory for City of Waukesha. And with that, I can look up in the early city directories especially, it's not just an alphabetic listing of individuals, there is also a street listing. So I can go to the section that has Broadway. You can see here, I had to cut out because it was a very long entry for Broadway. So Broadway from East Avenue at the south and west, so starting at the south and west corner of Broadway, moving towards the Fox River. Cutting towards that section then that we were looking at from 402, the John J. Casey Saloon, which fits what we saw, all the way through then, where I cut off the map here tonight was right about 424. But you can see I'm not only getting the names of the individuals at those addresses that I can look to match back up, but I can also look to match back up what is it that the city directory is recording their profession to be, and does that line up with the information on the Sanborn map? It may not be a one-for-one match, right? I've used before the analogy of impressionist painting. There can be discrepancies in the records sometimes. There are a number of reasons for that, right? It might be that when the rights publishers were sending their agents out to collect information, it was one business. And when Sanborn separately, again, 2 private companies, when Sanborn Fire Insurance Company sent their agents out to collect information, often their maps took 2 years to produce because of the level of detail. So there may have been a change of business between the time that the Sanborn agent and the rights agent are collecting information. But if I lay them together, I can, and this can be if you're researching from home, you've got 2 different web browser windows open. If you're in a research center space, whether that's with us at the Historic Society or say Waukesha Public Library or the Milwaukee Historic Society or even the Library of Congress, if ever you get a chance to visit them in person, laying different resources side by side so you can immediately compare can be a very productive thing to do. And even if you don't have that chance, to have your research notes with both can be very helpful. With this, it was making sure I was trying to keep that year consistent between them. But again, getting back to the story of what I can tell, I've kind of focused in on 402, the John Casey Saloon. It matches with the saloon here, so that makes a lot of sense to me. If I jump to 408, the John Shuck Saloon and Thomas Press, which fits what I see here on the map. So with those, and I'm jumping back a little bit into the primary research poll into how do you pull it together, but I could take those individuals' names, either John Casey or John Shuck, and start doing more genealogically driven research, trying to look up more information about those individuals. And that's true whether it's proprietors of businesses like this or prior property owners for homes, where by researching the individuals, you might understand a little bit more some of the stories that you might be able to tell connected to place. If it's a family residence, following the names of typically either a male property owner, women though do sometimes appear, often they're listed as something like Mrs. John Casey though, rather than their given name, but I digress. But looking Once you have a name from something like the city directory that matches up with your Sanborn map, going to a census record, and then looking for census record. Obviously 1917 is one of those in between years, but we could jump to 1920, see who is listed in the household with John Casey, who are the children, where are they living too. I did some of this digging for the program tonight. I know from looking at the census record, John Casey lived over on Pleasant Street, and that he and his wife had one child in the home in 1910. So I know a little bit of the before time relative to these 1917 resources. So I can start to add those details into the story that I might be able to tell, right? So it's gone from, there's a saloon on the corner of Main and Broadway, which is at the 5 Points, so a hugely trafficked area that would be a lovely, perfect location for getting folks to come into your saloon, to John Casey also is raising his young family in town. He and his wife live just a few blocks away on Pleasant Street, so far enough away from the main 5 Points intersection that they're not bothered in the evenings or on their weekends, but close enough certainly that he had easy access to get into his saloon, right? And so when I talk about what is the story behind it, it's that, and it's to be able to incorporate as well more specific details or more specific dates are, again, great ways to help build that story out a bit more. But building those connections across resources, right, from Sanborn Fire Insurance Map, from the city directory to a census record, all of those things combined allow that story to start building. From there, you could start looking at, okay, if I see where they're living, if I know from the census record what their ethnic descent is there likely a church in that area they may have attended? Are they listed as Irish or English, or in other parts of the city, Italian immigrants who likely would have attended St. Joseph's Catholic Church? So starting to build those connections as well. Part of documenting your work and building the narrative may lead you to more questions. And that is the wonderful part, I think, of doing research like this. It kind of never ends. There's always opportunity to keep adding to the story. One of the things I do encourage, though, in composing something is to find a theme for yourself that you can really, especially if you're looking at doing a tour of your property, whether that's something like Waukesha Unlocked or participating as a private homeowner in something like Preservation Days each May. That's an opportunity where you could bring folks into your home and give them a tour. So how do you put that together? Finding a theme really helps to make that easier, so that, yes, incorporate all of those details you found, but let architecture be the lead point of what you talk about. Whether that's something like a Greek revival home, a Queen Anne, a quintessential Milwaukee bungalow from the early 20th century, 1920s, 1930s, craftsman style, mid-century style. There are a few examples in the area of Sears Roebuck kit houses. That's an incredible way to talk about the rise of single family dwellings and how home ownership was made so accessible that Sears Roebuck could sell kit homes around the country. So using architecture as that, and to digging into some of the details that go along with it. The other one that can be very revelatory, especially for commercial properties, are prior owners or prior tenants often. A block might be owned by a single individual or a single entity, business entity, but the owners for the business is located inside. Through time, tracing them can reveal what the different uses of property are, if it goes from being a grocer's space to being a more specialized store, a sporting goods store, or a bicycle shop, for former blacksmith shop, what those evolve into over time through their owners. But owners too, right, come with essentially chapters built in for you to keep that kind of narrative idea going, that you can treat the first owners and they'll have a beginning date and an end date, and then the next owners have their beginning and end dates. And so it can be a good way to give yourself some built-in structure to your documentation. And I kind of combined that last idea, use, along with that ownership piece, but use of property over time, especially for new development that is a bit newer, homes that are part of subdivisions that were not in existence until the 20th century or the post-World War II era, as we started to see farms throughout the county begin to subdivide and sell off. It's sometimes still very interesting to understand what the history of that land was prior to the structure, the current home being on it. So looking at the farm use, was it predominantly crops? Was it a dairy? Was it sheep? Back in the 1850s, when wool was the most profitable agricultural good coming out of the county. And so looking at the history of farm, even though you might not have the farmhouse or a barn or a shed that was part of that original larger farm property that's now on your lot in a subdivision, it's still part of the history of the place you are in. So don't take for granted that longer history going back, even for developments and subdivisions that do feel much more modern, or at least 20th century forward. There is still history of place. I would also be remiss not to recognize the fact that I'm kind of setting the beginning of property research, and certainly what our collection focuses on is from 1834 forward. But the land was occupied well before that. Right, we are developing on top of land that was home to Potawatomi and Ojibwe and Menominee peoples, woodlands era peoples before that, for generations before. So you really can build back quite a ways what your property research looks like, and all of the people who have affected what it may look like today. I did want to talk a little bit about in tonight's program. Often when folks are starting to bring it all together, photos are the next thing that really they're hoping to look to find to go along with the dates and the names and the maps that they've been able to research with. Photos can be very difficult. One of the I'll call it a truism amongst archives is, especially photos of a home, stay with the family, because it's not to say that we don't all want beautiful pictures of our homes, but often it's the house is the backdrop to a momentous life event. And we keep those photographs with us through time and through generations of family through time to remember those events, whether it's a graduation, a new car, a wedding, a birthday. All of those things tend to be events around which we might be outside the house taking pictures, and we'll get a picture of the house too. And so many times photos that have come into our collections, certainly for the Waukesha County Historic Society, explicitly our collection is built by donation. So it means a family has decided to bring those materials into our repository to make sure they're available for others and to make sure they're preserved through time. That's really part of what our mission is and what we try and do. That said, the two kind of screenshots I have here are projects that we have worked on over the past decade. Really, we have been working to digitize more and more of our photography collections. The first, the Waukesha County History, 1870 to 1920. I talked about in our program about map resources. There are also a tremendous number of photographs that were uploaded to UW libraries, this dedicated catalog page. So those are searchable. That is I'll call it a boolean, so a very broadly defined range of photographs, but with descriptions, with information about where they're coming from and what they are. We have also, through our website then, created a collections portal. And so I'm going to pull up here quickly kind of what both of those look like live and in person. So I'm actually going to start on our website, so reverse order of that last slide. So waukeshacountymuseum.org or wchsm.org, both will land you on this homepage, hopefully. If you come across the top here, you'll see collections. and then a button to click here to explore our collections online. So from there, and perfect, it loaded. You'll come to a landing page that looks like this. And it gives you some information. You could absolutely jump into random images. It's going to pull exactly that, a random collection of images. But I've got one primed for us. So I jumped us to a property image. We had a couple of volunteers really adopt our homes photography collection or photography range back in 2016 and tried to associate a physical address with the image of the property that we had. We have a few hundred photos of houses. It's still a lot of material, but certainly not, if you think about the scope of the county's residences, to only have a few hundred images of homes is certainly a minority of homes in the county. But at the top is an object ID number. That's an identifier that we use. It's kind of like a library call number. So if you were interested, you'd be able to email and say, I was looking at this object ID photograph, and we would know exactly what that means. But more importantly, to kind of looking for things, it has, again, that address information where we were able to add it, along with associated ownership names, so far as we were able to find. With this one, again, we were trying to make this accessible very quickly. We took much of this information immediately from the reverse of this photograph itself. We do tend to trust those inscriptions. One of the tenets of archival science is that we have to trust the original creators of materials, right? That we do certainly try and interrogate items as they come in, but we do trust original creators were documenting things correctly. And so we've got the owner name there, an address there, and then an approximate circa date based on the type of photograph this is and that date of 1884. We know the photograph is not from 84. That is likely an estimate of the house, that the photograph more likely dates to this 1960 date. WF stands for Waukesha Freeman. In this case, this image came to us from the Waukesha Freeman's photography department. But pulling up the image of the house, you can see you've got the structure there, that projecting porch coming off the front. Very early house, certainly that circa 1940 does seem to fit that architectural style, kind of reading the architecture of the house a little bit. But just based on that photograph information, we'd be able to go back into map records, plat map records in this case. Pewaukee, especially Main Street Pewaukee, does have a bit more documentation in some city directories that we could look at to help verify that information. But again, if you've already done that work, you'd simply be able to look and make sure this matches what that work is you've already done. But if you come into this database, especially if you're looking for homes, and I'm going to go back, I clicked too quickly. The collection title here is very appropriately houses photographs. So coming into the advanced search function, you can actually look for collection houses, and you would pull up all of the images of houses we currently have uploaded to this database. You could get lost on here. There's lots of images on here. There are a few thousand photographs that we have uploaded, excuse me. Certainly more work to be done. We are every week getting more images attached to their records so that you've got that information, at least that baseline information that goes with each image. The other one then, that 1870 to 1920, here you can see scrolling down from that main header, the photos in collection here. There is this browse images button then that you can go through and start browsing through. There is also then this search function. You'll see it's pre-populated in that quotation, Waukesha County History, 1870 to 1920. Do not delete that. If you wanted to search for something additionally, just put a space between and add your next search term. So what that search bar is doing is narrowing to this collection first. So that's why you want to leave that quotation and then just add your more specific keyword search from there. So The other thing I wanted to talk about this evening, outside of doing tours of your property or building a program for your property, you can also build a research document that could support an historic designation of some kind. I am this evening skipping over one program that is the National Landmarks program. There are only 2,500 properties in the country on that database. It is very much a process reserved for the exceptional properties in the country. We all have special and significant properties, but that National Landmarks database is really for the cream on top. But talk a little bit about the National Register of Historic Places, the State Register of Historic Places, and then the local landmarks commissions. So kind of starting from the biggest, working towards the most immediately impactful for us all. National Register of Historic Places, I've got a screenshot from their website here. So I'm not going to read that to you, but it is administered through the National Park Service. So ultimately, Department of Interior helps oversee that program, and its districts, sites, buildings, structures, and objects significant in American history, architecture, archaeology, engineering, and culture. It does allow, if you are interested in having a property added to the National Register, you don't inherently have to be a nationally significant site. It does absolutely include listings that are of state level significance or even of local level significance. And that significance is really the key word when it comes to properties on the National Register. It is that through research and the documentation through that research process of why is this property important? Who are the people connected with it? What events happened there that have reshaped what a place was like, or reshaped a culture, or were significant in a moment of time for a certain municipality. Locations like 10 Chimneys, Alfred Lunt and Lynn Fontane's residence out in Genesee are absolutely on the National Register because of the number one, their impact on theater nationally, but also as a site of the creation of a number of partnerships and American theater works over the years. In total, there are more than 90,000 properties listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So it really is as inclusive as it can be, while still maintaining, right, that significance bar as the primary defining feature for inclusion. There is too, and this is something I hear frequently, folks who say, well, don't you have to be at least 70 years old before you're even considered? That is largely it is not the deciding factor. Age is not a deciding factor on a property, significance is. The 70-year guideline, and it was published as a guideline from NPS, was a way to try and help really manage the workflow of properties that were being listed. Although by the 1990s, preservationists were recognizing that structures from the mid-20th century, the 1940s and 1950s, structures that were just 40 or 50 years old, were also very significant. And so in many places you see buildings that are younger than that 70-year mark having been listed on the National Register because their significance was so clear and obvious so quickly. Frank Lloyd Wright and his associated structures are one very good example of structures that were listed or nominated on the National Register much before they were 70 years old, let alone even 50 years old in some cases. But if you are looking at the National Register for addition, you actually don't work first at that national level. You work with a state preservation office. They are the next level down from that National Register of Historic Places. So they are the more localized office representing that national register, but they also are the keepers of a state level register. So you have that kind of tiered system a little bit too. You can be on the state register and not be on the national register. If you are on the national register, you automatically also get inclusion on that state register though. I work quite a bit with the staff at the State Office of Historic Preservation, especially in education like this. If I need resources or if I have a question, they are absolutely wonderful. And they also do have a tremendous number of resources on their website. And I've kind of gone out of order on the slide here. So again, they help through the application process for both the National Register and State Register of Historic Places. They really do phase it out and have, again, staff to help along the way. They also have rehabilitation information. Even if you're not looking at getting on the state or national register, there is a whole section of free resources about how to preserve and protect your historic property. They also administer the historic tax credit program. To be eligible for tax credits, you do need to have that state listing. There are then also national tax credits, but again, that national listing or registration is associated with those. I am not an expert in those programs other than to say it is the State Office of Historic Preservation that is your go-to location for those programs. Locally, whether it's the Waukesha Historic Society or another county historic society or a smaller New Berlin Historic Society, we all function at the local level to help keep the resources you need to do the research to build your application that then goes to the State Office of Preservation. As much as I like to think I have influence in the world, I have no voice in making a decision around a state register listing. But again, the staff there is tremendously helpful. They have had, I know they're still transitioning, as many locations are, to hybrid working models. Many of them, because they are state employees, were in work from home or were tasked out over the last year. So do be patient with them. If you call and they don't reply, maybe they're on a split schedule yet, but they always have their emails listed as well for folks to follow up via email. Finally, we have our local landmarks commissions. And this process is, in the state of Wisconsin, a relatively new idea, and by relatively new, less than 30 years at this point, I think around 25 or so, that the state legislature created under guidelines produced by the National Park Service, Department of Interior, and Historic Preservation offices. So they released guidelines that allowed the state legislature to put in place a process for local municipalities to create what are called landmarks commissions. And really, the idea of those was to, again, bring it even more specific to where people were, so that the kind of at the local level is really where rules and regulations lie around what you can and cannot do with historic properties, right? The scary part for designations that folks talk about. In Waukesha County, there are only 3 municipalities that have gone all the way through with creating a landmarks commission that is a standing committee, and have also then followed through to become what's called a certified local government. So it's really completing that full process that was laid out in guidelines for creating local preservation entities throughout the state. So trying not to get lost in how these came to be, the city of Waukesha has a landmarks commission. McGuanago has a planning commission, or excuse me, a historic preservation review process. that is within the Planning and Zoning Commission function. And then the City of New Berlin also has a Landmarks Commission. The City of New Berlin's commission works very closely with the New Berlin Historic Society as well. Again, helping to give resources and support to property owners doing research. For each of them as well, especially City of Waukesha and New Berlin, education and promotion of historic resources is part of their mission as an entity. So it's not just that they are looking to regulate what you can and cannot do, it's also that they are there to help make sure that publicly owned or commercial properties that are of historic significance don't fall into disrepair. I am not on any of these landmarks commissions, but again, I do work with them at various points, either with our researchers coming in or with questions that we have. They also, and I cannot speak to specifics year over year because it may change, but they also often at the local level have some type of smaller grant or tax credit program. I do know that City of Waukesha, it looks, still does offer some stipend grant money for owners doing work. And part of it is to acknowledge the fact that restoration work on historic properties often comes with a higher price tag. And so those credits or those grants are to help offset the cost to bring it back down into what a more competitive rate would be if you were to use modern materials or construction and approaches. I did reach out to City of Waukesha Landmarks Commission, and they sent in this design policies booklet. I've just copied a couple of pages from it, but this PDF is available. The rest of it is actually very much informed by the National Register of Historic Places guidelines for historic properties. And so ultimately it is that national entity that is informing all the way down to this local level. But I did want to capture that box that's on the right. What do you need to go to the Landmarks Commission for, and what do you not need to go to landmarks for? Often it is, and it should be part of, if you need to pull a permit for a job or a renovation, oftentimes this is incorporated as part of that process. But again, some of what you can go to land, or what you need to go to approvals for, things like chimney repair or painting of wood siding, those are things that are also eligible to the grants that they have. And so it's an opportunity to make sure you're connecting with those funding opportunities to help offset your costs. So it's, as much as it is one more thing to do, it also does give you access to resources. It also, I really like this quick summary that they've included of some of the styles of houses or styles of architecture that are very frequent, at least within the areas that they oversee. As always, I will close here this evening with a reminder that our research center is open for appointments. We have been a bit busy of late, but do reach out, waukeshamuseum@gmail.com. We also do have a number of online links and resources there for you to check out. So please, please, please take advantage of those. We are looking to bring on some more volunteers in our research center space. I would not survive without our fabulous research center volunteers and all our volunteers, but hopefully adding a little bit more hours of service in the research center as well here this fall. So stay tuned for that. If you are generally interested in checking out more historic property-based things, we have still going on a Rally Round the Marker program. You can pick up brochures at the museum or download them from our website. You can actually, if you're at the museum when we are not open, there actually is a little mailbox, brochure box that is on the historic courthouse marker out front. So you can pick up rally booklets out of that little brochure box and return them. Either there's a return box there as well, or you can scan them and send them to our Gmail account, or otherwise turn them back in. We will be doing a drawing for a major award the Wednesday after Labor Day. So do check that out. There is also a historic downtown walking tour. That is another great example of what you can do with research. That historic downtown walking tour is very much themed around architectural history. It does, though, embed the history of the people behind some of the structures, what the structures were used for, but site to site, what's really linking each of those stops on that walking tour together is exploring the diversity of architecture that is in our historic downtown city of Waukesha area. Again, that historic downtown walking tour, part of the city of Waukesha's 125th anniversary. With that, I'm going to go to my end slide just so you've got some links. I saw a question pop through. Question, can old Sanborn maps be compared with more recent Sanborns, or were old maps simply updated? Typically, yes, you can do comparisons. Not knowing how many maps you have gotten to see, within city and municipal departments, there is a habit where you would create one map set and then kind of paste in updates. Within historic collections, we tend to have the Sanborn map from 1917 that is a relatively clean capture of 1917, and then we'll have a 1922 that's a clean capture of 22, and forward through time from there, so that you can compare and contrast against them through time. Hopefully that answered that question there, if anybody else was wondering about Sanborn maps. The other thing you can do is compare a Sanborn map to a plat map or to a atlas that gets down to the local level, because ultimately they are all describing the geographic reality of built place. You can work across those different map publications and compare them. My note always with published maps, though, whether it's Sanborn or a plat or an atlas, be aware that the date that's on them is not necessarily the date the information was collected, right? So if there's some discrepancy, that's where taking the maps and then also comparing them to a city directory, or also comparing them to newspapers for confirmation, can be very helpful to clarify timeline issues if you've got timeline discrepancies across those resources. Other questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.